You probably felt it before. That moment when life pushes back so hard that you wonder if you can keep going. Most men break under pressure, letting comfort and excuses define their limits. But what if I told you that becoming unstoppable has nothing to do with talent, luck, or waiting for motivation? It comes from principles so clear and so sharp that once you live by them, setbacks become fuel, obstacles turn into training, and failure itself becomes a stepping stone. This is what the samurai mastered, and it's what you're about to learn. You've been taught that life is a game of chance, but Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary master of the two swords, knew that life is a battle of strategy and will. He fought over 60 duels, always emerging victorious, not because he was invincible, but because he understood that the greatest obstacles aren't your enemies, but within yourself. He transformed pain into power, fear into courage, and weakness into a weapon. Your journey to becoming your best self won't be easy, but like a samurai, you'll learn to use pressure to sharpen your mind, body, and spirit, making you an unstoppable force in the modern world. And the truth is, your biggest enemy isn't procrastination, distraction, or lack of focus. Your biggest enemy is the lie you tell yourself about your own potential. But in this video, we'll unmask that lie and give you the map to your transformation. Prepare to face 10 lessons from a warrior who lived and died by discipline, and who will teach you how to forge your new identity. The first lesson is the hardest, but the most important: the art of seeing the world as it truly is, without illusions. The samurai's journey begins with truth. The truth about who you are, where you stand, and what's holding you back. Most men deceive themselves daily, calling weakness balance or laziness self-care. But Musashi believed that the man who lies to himself has already lost a battle. Self-assessment was his first weapon, a mirror sharper than any blade. He knew that self-deception is a refuge for the weak, a hiding place where mediocrity thrives. The first step to becoming unbreakable is to tear down that illusion. The art of self-knowledge for Musashi wasn't theory, but a brutal practice. After winning one of his most famous duels, he retreated to a temple for 2 years, not to celebrate, but to study his own weaknesses. Imagine that: the greatest swordsman alive, undefeated, yet obsessing over flaws invisible to others. That's the level of honesty that separates the warrior from the amateur. The amateur seeks validation. The warrior seeks truth, no matter how painful. The battle begins at home, in your own mirror. The enemy is not external. It hides in every excuse you make, in every action you postpone. It's time to stop saying, "I don't have time," and admit you're wasting it. It's time to stop pretending you're tired and recognize you're simply untrained. For a samurai, these excuses are enemies to be cut down before they take root. Mediocrity can only survive in shadows. The moment you shine light on it, it weakens. To apply this to your life, start tracking your actions with brutal clarity. Write down where your time truly goes. Log your distractions, your unkept promises, your skipped workouts. The numbers don't lie. They expose reality without mercy, showing the hours lost to screens or games, the opportunities you let slip by fear, and the excuses that became habits. The man who embraces self-assessment gains unshakable power because he stops hiding from the truth. He doesn't need external validation because his strength comes from within. This is the first lesson to forging your new self. But without the next step, you'll become rigid and inflexible. Musashi understood that rigidity breaks, but flexibility endures. He never used the same weapon twice in his duels. Sometimes a sword, sometimes a spear, sometimes even a wooden stick. Why? Because he knew that life never attacked you the same way twice. The man who insists on only one plan is the man who falls when reality shifts. To be unstoppable, you must learn to flow like water. Obstacles are inevitable. Plans will fail. Life will throw curveballs. If your routine is too rigid, it will collapse under the first pressure. Musashi's brilliance was that he didn't fight against reality. He bent with it. He adapted, reshaped himself, transformed so nothing could pin him down. That's why no opponent could predict his moves. He refused to be predictable or to become a slave to a single system. In today's world, this means breaking free from perfectionist traps. Too many men quit everything when their perfect routine is broken. They seek the ideal day, the perfect workout, the flawless outcome, and when life reveals its imperfection, they stop altogether. The samurai's way is different. If you can't train for an hour, train for 10 minutes. If you can't win with strength, use strategy. If one door closes, smash through another. Adaptability is not weakness, it is strength. While the weak cling to what they know, the strong accept change as part of the battlefield itself. Musashi saw the environment not as something to fear, but as something to master by becoming fluid. Obstacles don't break the man who bends, they sharpen him. And when you adopt this principle, laziness loses its excuse. I can't becomes I'll find a way. Water is never stopped by a rock. It simply flows around it and keeps moving forward. But to move like water, you must first face the fire. Every man faces pain, physical, emotional, or mental. Most run from it, chasing comfort as if it were safety. But Musashi saw pain differently. To him, pain wasn't punishment. It was fire, the fire that forges a blade of discipline if endured with the right mindset. The lazy man lets pain break him. The warrior uses it to harden his spirit. This principle is simple but brutal. Don't waste your suffering. Every discomfort you feel can either make you weaker or stronger. Musashi slept in caves and endured hunger and the forces of nature, not because he had no choice, but because he knew strength lives on the other side of hardship. By choosing difficulty, he trained his mind to stop fearing it. Modern life has made men soft because it sells them comfort as the highest goal. Air conditioning, fast food, endless entertainment. But a man dulled by comfort cannot win life's battles. Musashi's wisdom forces you to confront the truth. Comfort is not your ally. Pain is. To apply this, deliberately put yourself into small hardships. Train harder than feels comfortable. Take cold showers. Work when you don't feel like it. Not to punish yourself, but to prove that your will is greater than your feelings. Each time you willingly face discomfort, you rewire your brain to see it as fuel, not as something to fear. Pain becomes unstoppable energy when you stop asking why me and start saying use this. This is a lesson that will free you from the fear of discomfort, but the next step is what will transform your effort into lasting power. Musashi once wrote, 1,000 days of training to forge, 10,000 days of training to polish. Behind those words lies a brutal truth. Mastery is not a weekend challenge, but a lifetime of repetition. He knew that repetition, not inspiration, builds the mind of a warrior. Discipline is not born in moments of excitement, but in the grind of years. Most men want quick fixes. They search for shortcuts and hacks, hoping for instant results. But Musashi laughed at the idea of shortcuts. He spent decades repeating the same strikes with his sword, over and over, until the movements weren't just practiced, they were him. Every cut was carved into his identity. That is why no opponent could catch him off guard. The 10,000-day rule teaches you that effort compounds. 3 years of consistent discipline transforms habits into identity. And once your actions become who you are, laziness loses its grip. Quitting stops being an option because your very nature pushes you forward. In modern life, this principle means choosing one discipline and committing to it daily without excuse. Whether it's your health, your craft, or your work, the key is repetition until it becomes second nature. Most men never last more than a few weeks. Musashi lasted decades, and that is why his name is still remembered centuries later. If you want to be unstoppable, stop asking how fast it will happen and start asking how long you're willing to walk the path. The man who trains for 1,000 days will beat the man who trains only when he feels like it. But the path is only possible with the next lesson. Musashi respected knowledge, teachers, and traditions, but he depended on none of them. He studied under monks, warriors, and masters, yet always moved on, taking what was useful and discarding the rest. His independence made him unshakable, because no single mentor, book, or system controlled his strength. He honored wisdom, but his reliance was on himself. Dependency creates fragility. Many men attach themselves to gurus, routines, or external systems, believing they cannot function without them. But when the teacher leaves, the system fails, or conditions change, they collapse. Musashi avoided this trap by extracting value from everything without becoming a slave to anything. That's how he stayed sharp, while others weakened. True strength comes from the integration of knowledge, not dependency, applied to your life. This means respecting coaches and methods, but never surrendering your judgment. Learn from mentors, but don't idolize them. Use productivity systems, but don't let them own you. Inner strength travels with you, unshaken. If you depend on nothing external can break you. Opinions, setbacks, or even a loss of resources can't crush a man who carries his power inside. Dependency breeds weakness, but self-reliance breeds unshakable discipline. This independence is not isolation, it's freedom, and only a free man can truly be unstoppable. But to be free, you need the next secret. In his final years, Musashi left behind 4 words that define philosophy: never stray from a way, simple yet ruthless in its demand. What he meant is that true strength is not built in bursts of inspiration, but in the refusal to abandon the path, even when it feels impossible. The way is walked every day, not only when convenient. Many men fail because they mistake discipline for a sprint. They push hard for a week, a month, maybe a year, and then collapse when the fire of motivation burns out. Musashi endured for decades because he understood that consistency beats intensity. The man who stays on the path, even imperfectly, always triumphs over those who chase perfect effort and then quit. Life will test you. You will fall, you will slip, you will fail. Most men let those moments define them, giving up entirely. But Musashi's lesson is different. When you fall, you don't restart, you return. No guilt, no drama, just a relentless act of walking the path again. To never stray from the way means committing to discipline as a permanent lifestyle, not a temporary challenge. It means your principles are not negotiable, even when no one is watching, even when the world tempts you to stop. This endurance builds a strength that external forces cannot touch. When you embody this principle, you stop chasing motivation and start living discipline. You understand that failure is not the end, but a step in a journey. And when quitting is no longer an option, you become unbreakable, because the way itself makes you unbreakable. Musashi often reminded his students that a warrior's strength is twofold: the way of the pen and the way of the sword. In other words, true mastery requires balance between mind and body. A man who trains only his muscles becomes predictable and shallow. A man who sharpens only his intellect grows fragile and hesitant. But when both are developed together, discipline becomes complete. The body is the vessel of endurance. It teaches you pain, stamina, and the ability to push past limits. But the mind is a strategist. The force that directs action, makes decisions, and controls emotion under pressure. Musashi himself spent as much time writing, painting, and practicing calligraphy as he did wielding his blade. To him, creativity and combat were not opposites, but partners. Mind and body, strategy and action must walk together. In modern life, this principle means you cannot neglect either side. Train your body with discipline, because strength and health fuel your capacity to act. Train your mind with study, reflection, and creativity, because wisdom fuels your ability to choose. The unstoppable man is forged in both arenas. The danger comes when you favor one and dismiss the other. Neither the strongest body nor the sharpest mind is sufficient on its own. Balance is what creates the true edge. One of the most feared truths Musashi embraced was the inevitability of death. To the samurai, fearing it meant living in chains. By confronting mortality daily, they stripped fear of its power and acted with unmatched clarity. Musashi fought more than 60 duels, often against men who sought to kill him. Yet, he walked into each battle with calm. His secret? Death was no longer his enemy. When you accept that loss, failure, or even the end itself is inevitable, you stop living cautiously. Most men waste their lives in hesitation, avoiding risks because they are afraid of the pain of defeat. Musashi knew that fear of death is a root of fear of life. By embracing mortality, he was able to act decisively, never paralyzed by what could go wrong. Applied to your life, this principle means detaching from outcomes you cannot control. The man who fears loss is already defeated. But the man who accepts is free to act boldly, to risk greatly, and to achieve what the timid never attempt. Fear shrinks when faced directly. Musashi turned it into fuel, reminding himself that every day was borrowed time. That urgency drove him to train harder, live sharper, and waste nothing. When you adopt the same relationship, nothing can intimidate you. Criticism loses its sting, failure loses its grip, and even hardship becomes small in the face of finality. Accepting death doesn't weaken life. It makes life unbreakable. At first, discipline feels like effort. Every action is a choice, every step a battle against resistance. But Musashi's method reveals a deeper transformation. When practiced long enough, discipline ceases to be something you do. It becomes something you are. He didn't force himself daily to live like a warrior. Over time, the path itself became his identity. He didn't decide to live this way. He simply became it. For modern men, this principle means consistency until habit merges with character. At first, waking up early, training, working with focus, or resisting distraction will feel unnatural. But repetition makes them normal, and persistence makes them part of you. Soon you stop thinking, I must be disciplined, and begin to live as a disciplined man without question. This shift is the death of laziness. When your habits are aligned with your identity, failure no longer feels like an option. It feels like betrayal of who you are. This inner accountability is stronger than any external system because it flows from your very sense of self. When discipline turns into identity, you don't rely on motivation, rewards, or outside pressure. Your strength is self-sustaining. You no longer fight to be consistent. You simply live consistently. And that is the moment when no obstacle can shake you, because your path and your being have become one. Musashi's greatest wisdom was not found in victory, but in his understanding that the path never ends. Even after 60 undefeated duels, even after decades of training, he still considered himself a student. At 50 years old, he declared, I have not yet reached the way. That humility and persistence reveal the final secret. The warrior's journey is eternal. For many men, success becomes the enemy. They achieve a goal, feel pride, and then soften. Discipline fades, hunger disappears, and arrogance takes root. Musashi avoided this trap by never allowing himself to believe he had arrived. Every duel, every drawing, every reflection was part of the same infinite training ground. To live this principle means refusing to retire from growth. You don't reach a point where discipline becomes unnecessary. You don't graduate from the path of self-mastery. Life tests you every day, and the true warrior welcomes each test with readiness, not resentment. The eternal path is not a curse. It is proof that you are alive. This mindset frees you from the illusion of completion. You stop chasing the day when things will finally be easy and instead embrace the truth. It never gets easier. You simply grow stronger. The man who understands this never stagnates, never weakens, never stops sharpening his blade. You have seen how Musashi's philosophy transforms ordinary men into forces that cannot be broken. Independence of mind, adaptability, mastery through repetition, respect without dependency, balance of mind and body, acceptance of death, identity through discipline and the eternal path. These are not just isolated lessons. They form a system, a method for life. The truth is simple. You do not need motivation when you live by the way. You no longer wait for the right moment, the right feeling, or the perfect conditions. Discipline becomes natural. Pain becomes fuel, and obstacles become allies. This is what makes a man unstoppable. The refusal to abandon the path, no matter what comes. And here is your reward for staying until the end. Musashi's hidden teaching, rarely spoken but always lived. The way is in training. There is no final destination, no secret beyond the practice itself. Every day you commit, every moment you endure, every step you take on this path is already victory. If you choose this life, you won't need to tell others you are strong. They will see it. They will feel it. Your presence will carry the quiet weight of a man who cannot be shaken. That is the samurai way, and now it is yours to embody.